In the frozen lands of the north, ancient sculptors carved their gods not as serene figures, but as warriors locked in eternal struggle. Before the Viking Age reached its end, stone masons captured the moment the world began to die. And of all the Norse pantheon ever cast in marble, one figure stands alone at the edge of Ragnarök, waiting to devour the sun itself. Tonight, we walk the halls of Norse mythology. Every god, every giant, every creature that the Vikings carved in defiance of their own doom. From the All-Father who hung himself on Yggdrasil to discover the runes, to the monsters prophesied to devour the nine worlds, these are the sculptures that made a civilization unafraid to stare at the end of everything. Stay with us until the final figure. We begin with Odin, the All-Father, the Wanderer. His sculptures show him as he was ancient, driven, relentless in his hunger for knowledge. The Vikings did not sculpt him as kind. They sculpted him as a god willing to lose everything, even his own eye, to understand the nature of existence itself. This was a deity that demanded sacrifice, not from weakness but from necessity. But what most sculptors chose to emphasize was Odin's hunger for wisdom, his willingness to suffer. He hung himself on the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, all to unlock the secrets of the runes. The Norse believed this wasn't madness. This was the price of understanding, and the marble figures capture that burning intensity in every carved line of his face. Beside Odin stands Frigg, his wife, mother of all the Aesir gods. Where Odin was wild and obsessive, Frigg was patient and protective. The sculptures show her with a crown, her face calm but knowing. She alone knew the fate of Ragnarök, yet she chose not to warn Odin. This was a goddess of profound silence and deeper wisdom than even the All-Father possessed. Then we turn to Thor, the thunder god, and the contrast is immediate. Where Odin was lean and driven, Thor is carved as pure muscle and fury. His hammer Mjölnir is always beside him, the weapon that never missed, that always returned to his hand. The sculptors understood something vital. Thor was not the wisest of the gods, but he was the most beloved, the protector of mortals and the defender of Midgard. Mjölnir itself was forged in the hands of dwarven smiths, and the Vikings who carved Thor's sculptures made certain to show the hammer with almost divine detail. It was said the hammer was so heavy that only Thor could lift it. The sculptures suggest the weight. The marble craftsmen carved the support beam thick and unyielding, as though the stone itself strained under the burden of that legendary weapon. Yet even Thor had limits. The sculptures that show him fighting the Midgard serpent, Jörmungandr, the world dragon, reveal something darker. In that final battle at Ragnarök, Thor would slay the serpent but fall dead himself, poisoned by its venom. The marble captures this, not triumph but a last stand, not victory but defiance in the face of inevitable death. Loki emerges next from the shadows, and the sculptures grow uneasy. He is the trickster, the bound one, the father of monsters. Some marble figures show him as almost beautiful, almost charming, which makes the malice in his carved smile all the more unsettling. The Norse understood something profound. The most dangerous gods are not the ones that look fierce. They are the ones that look like they could convince you to betray everything. The sculptures tell Loki's crimes in marble sequence. He caused the death of Baldr the Beautiful, the most beloved of all the gods, through deception and a mistletoe dart. Baldr's death was the beginning of the end, the first crack in the Aesir's immortality. And Loki, for this single act, was bound beneath the earth with serpent venom dripping onto his face for all eternity. The marble captures his twisted form, bound and defiant. But Loki would not remain bound. The sculptures prophesy his return, on the day of Ragnarök, when he would break free and sail the ship Naglfar, carrying giants and fire to devour the 9 worlds. The marble artists carved him not as a monster to be pitied, but as a force of nature that even the gods could not ultimately contain. Imprisonment could only delay him, never defeat him. Now we turn to the beautiful ones, Baldr and Hod. Baldr was carved as perfection in marble, radiant, pure, the god of light itself. Every sculpture shows him with an almost ethereal quality, as though the marble was illuminated from within. The Norse loved him because he represented everything good, everything worth protecting. And that is precisely why his death shattered their entire world. But beside Baldr stands Hod, blind and tragic. Hod was the one manipulated by Loki to throw the mistletoe dart that killed Baldr. The sculptures show Hod in shadow, his blindness suggested by the carved emptiness of his eyes, his innocence at odds with his terrible crime. He did not mean to kill his brother, but intent means nothing when the deed is done and the world begins to crack. Tyr emerges next, the god of war and sacrifice. But unlike Thor, Tyr's sculptures show a god of law and honor. He is carved often with only one hand because he sacrificed his hand to bind Fenrir, the great wolf, with the magical chain Gleipnir. The marble shows the missing limb not as a weakness, but as the price of responsibility. Tyr was the god who understood that sometimes you must give everything to hold back chaos, but Tyr's sacrifice was temporary. At Ragnarök, Fenrir would break his chains and swallow the sun itself. The marble sequences show the progression, Fenrir growing larger, the chains weakening, and finally, in sculpture after sculpture, the moment the great wolf's jaws open wide enough to swallow not just Tyr, but the very light of the heavens themselves. This was not a god who won. This was a god who delayed his own doom. Heimdall stands at Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that connects all 9 worlds. The sculptures show him as the Watchman, alert and eternal, with ears so sharp he can hear grass grow. His role was to guard the bridge from the giants, to be the sentinel that kept the worlds apart. But the marble also shows his exhaustion. This was a god whose eternal vigilance would ultimately fail. Sif is carved as the golden goddess, Thor's wife, her hair rendered in incredible detail, not because of mere beauty, but because Loki once cut off her hair as a cruel joke. The sculptures show her with new hair forged from real gold by dwarven smiths. She became a symbol of resilience, of being broken and then made whole again, yet bearing the mark of that violation forever in the precious metal of her crown. Idun holds the apples of youth, and the sculptures make clear that without her, the gods would age and die like mortals. She is carved as a protector, a guardian of immortality itself. The marble shows her with baskets of apples, small and precious, the only thing keeping the Aesir alive and strong. Yet at Ragnarök, even her apples would fail and the gods would fall old and weak into battle. Now the pantheon darkens as we approach the giants and the monsters. Surtr stands carved as a fire giant, his form almost molten in marble, flame suggested by the aggressive carved lines and the fiery expression carved into his face. Surtr was prophesied to ignite the 9 worlds at Ragnarök, to make the stars disappear and the earth sink into the sea. This was not a creature of intelligence or malice. This was pure elemental destruction. Jötunn, the frost giants, are carved in contrast, their forms suggesting cold and age. The marble shows them ancient and patient, waiting at the edge of Midgard. They did not burn like Surtr. They froze. They waited. And at the end of all things, they would march across the rainbow bridge to fight the gods. Some sculptures show them already walking, inexorable and terrible in their patience. Jörmungandr, the Midgard serpent, dominates entire gallery walls in marble relief. This was a creature so massive it encircled the entire world and held its own tail in its mouth. Sculptures show its scales in incredible detail, each one carved individually, each one suggesting a creature of impossible scale. When Jörmungandr thrashed, the oceans would flood the earth. Its venom would poison the sky. This was a monster that made titans look small. Fenrir is carved as the great wolf, and the sculptures do not shy away from his monstrosity. His maw opens wide enough to swallow worlds, his jaws stretching from earth to sky. Yet even Fenrir was not stupid or unreasoning. The marble suggests an intelligence in his carved eyes, a hunger that is aware of itself. This was a creature that knew it would devour Odin himself at the end of days. Naglfar is not carved as a ship but as a skeletal thing, a vessel built from the fingernails of the dead. The Norse sculpture suggests something profane and broken, not a vessel of conquest but a coffin made to carry the giants of Muspelheim to the final battle. When Naglfar breaks free from its moorings, it signals the end. The marble captures that moment of terrible transition. Yet the Norse gods are not helpless in these sculptures. Heimdall's horn is carved with extraordinary detail, the Gjallar horn that would sound the alarm when Ragnarök began. Yggdrasil, the world tree, stretches through multiple sculptures as a reminder that even as one world dies, the tree itself would survive, rooted and eternal. The marble suggests renewal alongside destruction. Vidar is carved as the Avenger, Thor's brother and the god who would survive Ragnarök. The sculptures show him stepping on the wolf's lower jaw, gripping its upper jaw, ripping Fenrir's jaws open to avenge his father. This was a god not of power but of justice and survival. In the marble, we see the moment of Fenrir's death, and in that death, the promise that something would endure. Magni and Modi are carved as young gods, Thor's sons, walking away from Ragnarök carrying their father's hammer. The marble shows them as hope, the new generation that would inherit the worlds after the destruction. Not all was lost. Not all would perish. The Norse believed that even from the end, something new could grow. The sculptures capture this bittersweet renewal. And then, standing alone at the edge of the gallery, the final sculpture emerges from darkness. It is Loki fully revealed at last, not bound anymore, but free. This is the trickster in his ultimate form, the one who would bring about the end of everything. The marble captures him at the moment of greatest power, the instant before chaos consumes the 9 worlds. This is the face that the Vikings were most afraid to carve. Yet even Loki's victory is not complete. The Norse did not sculpt him as eternal or unchanging. They sculpted him as a moment, the instant of maximum chaos, the peak of destruction. And even in that moment, the marble reminds us that the world would be reborn. The vision was not of permanent darkness, but of a great turning where death leads to birth, destruction to creation. These are the gods carved in stone by a people who knew their pantheon had an ending, not defeat but transformation. The Norse looked at their sculptures not with dread but with clarity. This was how the universe actually worked. Creation, struggle, destruction, rebirth. Again and again, forever. The marble galleries stand as monuments to a civilization unafraid to stare at eternity and carve it with their own hands. Which god do you think was truly most dangerous? Loki with his cunning or Surtr with his inevitable fire? Tell me in the comments below. And subscribe to Gods in Stone, because next we walk the marble halls of ancient Greece, where the Olympians carved a very different kind of godhood. The statues are waiting. We'll see you there.